Growing up, I was a huge fan of Dragon Ball Z, and still am even to this day. I would watch episodes of the show whenever it was on TV, and back in high school, my brother and I bought the complete series and watched all 291 episodes in their entirety, something I don't plan on ever doing again in my life. It's a great show, but infamously long, and filled to the brim with filler. Anyways, I watched the show, read all of the manga, and even played many of the video games which there is an abundance of, the main ones being the Budokai series as well as Raging Blast. Growing up with these kinds of fighting games, especially the Budokai series, meant I played a lot of Dragon Ball Z in a 2D fighting format. Over the years, I kind of got tired of that formula, and always wanted something more, which is why I found myself gravitating to games like Raging Blast. I haven't even played Fighters, despite its positive reviews, because again, I was tired of the whole 2D thing. I needed something more, something different. And this brings me to Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, the newest game in the series and the first of the 2020s decade. It honestly snuck up on me because I knew of its existence and development, but didn't watch a whole lot of stuff on it. I was ignoring it for the most part, and focusing on many other things in my life. Dragon Ball Z just hasn't been a priority of mine for quite some time. But after hearing all the buzz following its release, I decided to pick it up being a lifelong Dragon Ball fan, and after playing it, guys, this is one of my all-time favorite video games now, period. I felt like a kid again playing this game. Dragon Ball Z Kakarot was what I've been looking for in this series for what seems like forever. They finally took it in an entirely new direction that suits not only the world and characters, but the story of the Dragon Ball universe as well. Dragon Ball Z Kakarot is a semi-open world RPG set within the Dragon Ball universe. It has you play as various characters from the series, such as Goku, Piccolo, Gohan, Vegeta, and a few others, as you play through each of the four main sagas of the story. The Saiyan saga has you face off against Raditz, a member of the humanoid alien race known as the Saiyans, and Goku's long-lost brother. After he is defeated, getting a hole through his chest thanks to Piccolo's special beam cannon, the heroes are forced to encounter Raditz's superiors, Nappa and Prince Vegeta, who arrive on Earth 1 year later. The Frieza saga, my personal favorite, sends you to planet Namek in search of that world's Dragon Balls that are able to grant 3 wishes when collected, and not just one like the Dragon Balls of Earth. On the hunt for these artifacts is the evil Emperor Frieza, who seeks immortality. Throughout this section of the game, you encounter the always entertaining Ginyu Force, and Goku transforms into a Super Saiyan for the first time in his epic battle with Frieza at the end. The third saga focuses on the androids, cybernetic humans created by the evil Dr. Gero that possess unlimited energy and an unquenchable thirst for destruction. The android saga concludes with a confrontation against Cell, the ultimate bio-android created by Dr. Gero that was made using genetic information from the strongest fighters in the universe, Goku, Vegeta, Piccolo, and Frieza. And finally, the Majin Buu saga has the heroes face off against Majin Buu, the strongest and most dangerous foe they have encountered up until that point, an immensely powerful being created through magic, Barbary's magic to be exact. This saga is just balls to the wall crazy with eye candy, filled to the brim with transformations, fusions, everything you can imagine basically happens. It's nuts. I don't hate this part of the story, quite the contrary. But I do think there is way too much stuff happening in it, which is why it's not my personal favorite, but to each their own.
Big Bang Attack!
Dragon Ball Z Kakarot is the best and most accurate video game adaptation of this series in my opinion. There is none better. Some of the other DBZ games released over the years may have better gameplay, it all comes down to opinion, but in terms of telling its story, making you feel as though you were playing through the entire saga, through each episode, all the ups and downs, this game is at the top of the list. It annihilates the competition. Dragon Ball Z Kakarot is a faithful love letter to all things Dragon Ball Z, and if you are a fan of this series in any way, you need to get this game. It's a long experience, it's going to take you a while to complete it, it's a fairly big game, but that's the fun of it all. It's immersive, takes its time, and adapts most of the necessary elements from the Dragon Ball Z series in such an entertaining way, you'll leave it feeling satisfied, as if you have played through an interactive version of the entire Dragon Ball Z saga, which it is, and something it does with the utmost respect and skill to the source material. Like I said, DBZ Kakarot is an RPG, and it allows you to fully explore a variety of locations from the franchise, some small, some large, and some quite massive. It isn't completely open world, but several of the areas do connect to each other, which add to their scale. You can fly around completing main quests, side quests, and battle enemies to earn experience, fish, hunt and gather resources, cook food to receive temporary boosts, locate the 7 Dragon Balls and make various wishes by summoning Shenron, utilize a training room and complete challenges, build vehicles using components you find. There are so many things to do in this game off the beaten path. On top of the main training room located at the Capsule Corporation, one you can upgrade by the way, there are also smaller training areas located throughout the world that allow you to fight simulated enemies and improve your base attacks, letting you acquire advanced skills for each of the playable characters. I love that you get to level up in this game and that there is a clear indication of how much you have grown in power. Dragon Ball Z was always a story about progress, discipline, and consistent training to grow stronger, to face that next challenge, overcome that next obstacle. I think these RPG elements are a natural fit for the DBZ narrative. Now, Dragon Ball Z Kakarot's RPG elements are rather basic, and it's gotten some flack for it which I think is unwarranted. It's not as layered as a lot of other role-playing games out there, but who cares? This is Dragon Ball Z, a mainstream IP that needs to appeal to all audiences and all ages. I think if its RPG elements had been more complex, it may have taken away from the overall experience of the game and its story. DBZ Kakarot is fairly simplistic, but again, that's what works about it, at least in my opinion. It gives you several distractions, but not too many that it becomes overwhelming, or takes focus away from the main narrative. The story comes first, and never gets lost in the shuffle. There is a nice balance. I've heard some critics say this game has too much filler, which I find laughable. Have you seen the show? Dragon Ball Z was full of filler. And besides, compared to those original 291 episodes, you can play this game like 10 times over and still have hours to spare. A lot of the side stuff in DBZ Kakarot may seem insignificant and tedious, but it's the kind of stuff you'd see these characters doing during some of those filler episodes. If anything, I think it adds to the overall experience and immerses you into the world and characters of the Dragon Ball universe even more. Now I admit some of the side quests aren't that interesting, but most of them are over pretty quick, so I can't complain. Exploring the world is a lot of fun, and time will escape you every once in a while, which means something it's doing is working. It's engaging you in some way. I've heard a few people say the environments aren't that detailed, and feel last gen, but that too is something I couldn't disagree with more. Have you really taken the time to look around? And if so, this shit is based off an anime. What the hell are you expecting? Hyper-realism? Okay, let's move on to the combat. To be honest, I didn't like it at first. Growing up with Budokai and even Raging Blast, I found the control scheme in this game to be a bit awkward, especially when charging ki, performing super attacks, even moving around just felt weird, and it took me a lot longer than I'd like to admit to get down. But once I did, it began to grow on me, and before I knew it, I was performing vanishing attacks, turning Super Saiyan, and teleporting around like a madman, which basically replaced my blocking at times, because it's just so much damn fun to do. Now once again, I have not played Dragon Ball FighterZ, I don't know how good its combat system is, but I think in terms of 3D Dragon Ball games, Kakarot takes the cake and is the best fighting system in my opinion. It encompasses the speed and intensity of the battles from the anime, and despite the learning curve at first, at least for me, probably just because of the past games I've played, it is pretty simple and not too complicated to master. I really enjoyed playing the multi-battles because they keep you on your toes, with guys coming at you from all different directions, which is something that happened a lot in the show and is represented perfectly here. Despite my admiration for everything this game has to offer, for the most part, Dragon Ball Z Kakarot is not perfect by any means. I think the flight controls could be better, and raising and lowering your altitude with the R1 and R2 buttons seems like an odd choice. I think the right analog stick could have been used to maneuver your character like that, at least when you're flying at high speeds, but whatever. I did face a few glitches during my playthrough, which is unfortunate, nothing game-breaking but annoying nonetheless. The most notable being the entire cutscene after defeating Vegeta's ape form at the end of the Saiyan saga, really to end that entire section of the story sadly, that had a loud and deafening sound continuously playing in the background. During my fight with the ape, he or I caused a section of the ground to explode with one of our attacks, but it never disappeared, and in some parts of the cutscene you can still see it making impact. It's actually quite funny.
I'm sorry, but just let him go. Wait, are you serious? Let him go. He's just gonna regain his strength and come back and kill everyone. I know. This guy killed our friends! He came here to massacre everyone on the planet! He's not just gonna pull a Piccolo and just change sides. We have to stop him.
I hate to say it because I am a very patient man, but the loading times with this game are pretty fucking terrible. Like I said, a few of the locations in this game are connected, but you'll still find yourself having to fast travel quite a bit, and each time you do, you have to sit through a loading screen between each area. Now, this isn't that much of a problem, because the game is so engrossing and fun that you don't really care in most instances. But when you're doing side quests that teleport you all over, from location to witness a few sentences of dialogue, before moving on to the next, ending in some fetch quest or battle, before again sending you to a few more locations, it feels like the loading screens last longer than the quest itself. It's kinda painful. The community boards are an interesting addition to this game, to say the least, but I don't really know what to say about them, to be honest. I mean, it's cool that you get a token for each of the characters you meet or defeat throughout the game, and are able to place them down based off their relationships with the others to acquire various boosts, but I don't really feel it's necessary, and the boosts you do get are insignificant in the grand scheme of things. I never really notice much of a difference when I have them. Hardcore RPG fans would be able to pick out each and every little change, but you could probably beat the entire game without using the community boards at all. They aren't essential for success. The final thing I want to mention, which is a nitpick and something out of anyone's control, is that the voice actors for Frieza and Captain Ginyu pale in comparison to their originals. It's something I've never been able to get used to ever since the release of Dragon Ball Z Kai. Christopher Ayers is good as Frieza, don't get me wrong, he's great even, but he'll never be as good as Linda Young. She will always be Frieza to me. Frieza is actually my favorite villain in the Dragon Ball universe, and when I learned Young was going to be recast because she wasn't able to keep up with all the screaming anymore, I was crushed. Again, Ayers is still a great Frieza, but he'll never be number one, not to me. With our Bruce Elliott voicing Captain Ginyu, it's a completely different story though. He sucks, what can I say? Ginyu had one of the most distinct voices in the franchise, one of my favorites, but now he sounds so flat and forgettable, it's a damn shame. Elliott's delivery is just so bland, and lacks the energy and personality found within Bryce Armstrong's version, the one I enjoy and am most familiar with. Mind you, Armstrong retired from voice acting in 2009, and sadly passed away early January, so he obviously wasn't available, but I think they could have chosen someone a lot better to replace him than Elliott. I get that they don't have to mimic the previous voice, and should provide their own take on the character, it makes sense, but I mean, it's like this guy isn't even trying.
Hey, Captain, here's your scanner. Right. Now, back to the ship. It's possible Lord Frieza may have returned already.
Again, this is just nitpicking, and this kind of stuff is out of anyone's control. It comes with the territory, especially with a franchise that has lasted as long as Dragon Ball Z. Voice actors are going to get older, retire, or won't be able to keep up with the demands of all the screaming this type of performance requires. One day, Sean Schemmel and Christopher Sabat will have to pass the torch to other people too. All of their characters will have to be recast. Goku, King Kai, Nail, Vegeta, Piccolo, Yamcha, Rikum, you name it. It's a sad thought, I know, but Dragon Ball Z isn't going anywhere, and this kind of stuff is a reality.
I've grown tired of your pathetic jokes.
Alright, I think I'm gonna end it there. Dragon Ball Z Kakarot might not be the best DBZ game. From a gameplay perspective, it's entirely based on opinion with that, but I think it's safe to say it is the best adaptation of the franchise in video game form. It's incredibly faithful to its source material, encompassing everything that made it so great to begin with, and makes you feel like you're playing through every episode of the show, minus most of the filler of course. It's a very immersive experience flying around and exploring the world of Dragon Ball Z. I think true DBZ fans are going to adore this game like I did, and look past some of its flaws. It's the type of Dragon Ball Z game I've always wanted, not necessarily an RPG, because I wouldn't say the genre is my cup of tea in most instances, but making the story and environment more open adds to the whole adventure feel of the series. To be honest, I don't think they're going to be able to make a more accurate adaptation of the franchise in video game form. I mean, the gameplay and mechanics and everything can be tweaked, even the graphics. That could technically improve. Though it is based off an anime, it's perfect already. But the way they have adapted the story, how much more accurate can you get? This is about as close as they come. The only other things I can see them adding is more of the filler stuff, but at that point, it might take away from everything else. This has been NerdGasm. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit that subscribe button and bell icon to be notified of all future content I release. If you want to help support the channel and nominate future comic book, manga, and superhero-related video games for me to review, head on over to patreon.com/channelnerdgasm and check out the rewards I have for you on there. Any bit of financial backing helps and makes YouTube videos like these a reality. I will see you all in the next one. Take care.
I'm sorry, Dad. Everyone. I didn't have what it takes to beat Cell. I wanted to punish Cell for what he did, but I couldn't. Please, please, forgive me!
Gohan! What are you doing? Don't give up!
Dad!
Pour every ounce of power you've got into that Kamehameha, just like Cell's doing! You can do this, Gohan! You have the power!
But I can only use one arm, and I'm not even at full power!
You'll be fine. You can still win! Believe in yourself, Gohan. Release it! Release everything! Give him all you've got! Show me, Gohan! Show me our combined power!
I will.
This is the end for you, Gohan!
He actually did it!
Way to go, Gohan.